Okay, so let's look at SOHCAHTOA. You spelt it wrong as well. It's S-O-H, leave a gap, C-A-H, leave a gap, T-O-A. SOHCAHTOA will only be used in right angle triangles. So here's a right angle triangle, and there's your right angle. Okay, now here's the rule. If you are to work out a missing side, okay, they have to give you one side, meaning one side value, and they have to give you one angle. If you are working out a missing angle, you have to be given two sides. No angle, but two sides. So you need to learn that. If they ask you to work out a missing side, they have to give you one side and one angle. So therefore, technically, they're asking you they have to give you two bits of information, two bits of numbers. And if you're working out a missing angle, again, two bits of information, but the two bits of information are two sides. So the first thing that we have to do, make sure we have got the SOHCAHTOA on there. Okay, I'll rewrite it. So we've got S-O-H, C-A-H, and then T-O-A. So in order to do this, here's a right angle triangle. Okay, and if I give you, for example, 12 centimeters here, and I give you something like 38 degrees here, and this only works for right angle, okay, and they tell you work out what x is, the first thing you do is you start at the right angle, and you have to label all three sides, okay, of your triangle. You label them using the three letters H, O, and A. The H stands for hypotenuse, which means it's the longer side, which means it's the side opposite the 90 degrees. So here we go, opposite the 90 degrees over here, okay, that becomes my hypotenuse. So I'm just going to label it H. The next one is O, O for opposite. It is the side opposite the angle. Okay, so if we look at it, we only have one angle, which is 38 degrees. I know 90 degrees is an angle, but we've used it to work out the hypotenuse. So we only use the 90 degrees to work out where the long side is. The O and the A we use with the other angle that's not 90 degrees. So in this case, it's 38 degrees, and the side opposite it, okay, is called opposite. The last one, adjacent, with the letter A, means next to. So technically, it's the side that we haven't labeled at all, okay, and it's next to the angle, so that's the adjacent. Okay, so you've labeled HOA. You then go for a walk around all three sides, and you must circle two sides out of the three sides. How do you know which two sides out of the three you have to circle? The sides that you have to circle have to either give you a length, as in within a number, or it's the side you're working out. So let's have a walk around. I always start with the hypotenuse always first. That's got 12 in there, okay, it's got 12, and it's got a number. That's why I'm going to circle it. I then go around, I'm just going around the circle, doesn't matter how. I then now come to the opposite. Now the opposite doesn't have an X in there, which means I'm not working it out, nor does it have a number, so I ignore it and go around again. The adjacent has got the missing side called X. So I know I need to work it out even though it doesn't have a number, and I have to circle two out of the three sides. So the sides that you have to circle is the one with the number and the missing side. So therefore, if that's the case, okay, therefore I've circled a H and I've circled an A. So the hypotenuse and the adjacent. Now if I look at my three things on the top here, SOH, CA, and TOA, one of them will have a H and an A in there. One of them could have a H and an O and an A, okay, but I want A and H. Now if you look at this, we've got O and H, okay, so it's got the H, but it doesn't have the A, so I can't use that. The second one has A and H in there, and that's the one I want to use because it's the only one with A and H. And just to check, if I go to TOA, TOA's got O and A, but here I'm not using the O at all, so therefore I cross it out. Okay, you then end up drawing two pyramids. One pyramid, two pyramids. Always draw two. And we're going to use this CAH and we're going to label it. So how do we label it? We always start on the bottom. Here we go, just draw the stick person. We all start at the bottom, we climb up the pyramid and then come down the pyramid. So the first letter is C, so I'm going to put a C here. The next letter is A, so I'm going to put an A here. And the last letter is H, so I'm going to put a H here. So we've got CA, C-A-H. The bottom left represents C, which is on your calculator, cos. So we always have to put cos with the angle. The angle must on the bottom left always follow, whether it's sin, cos or tan. We must always have an angle. How do we know what the angle is? Let's go to the diagram. It's 38 degrees. So I'm going to put cos of 38 here. What's on top of the pyramid? It's A. Go back to your diagram. Where's A on your diagram? Wherever A is, it's got an X there. Look at that. So therefore, I'm going to put an X up there. Then I go to the bottom of the pyramid where the H is, and the H represents, if we go to the diagram again, represents 12. So I'm going to put a 12 here. You then take your hand, you can do this on the screen, and you cover X. The subject we're always finding, we must cover it on the pyramid. So take your hand or finger and cover the X. If you cover the X, I'll just cross it here, so your hand, that's your hand covering it. You're left with this on the bottom going across. So it is cos in brackets. Don't forget to close the bracket. Do not forget to close the bracket. Cos of 38, close the bracket, and then times 12 because it's going across. So therefore, when you put that in the calculator, that will give you the missing side. Let's have a look at another one, please. Then you can have a go at this. So in a second. So have a look at this. There we go. There's the right angle. This time I'm going to label this one 7 centimeters. Sometimes they like to do this. Here's A, here's B, here's C, and they'll say find BC, length BC. Now if they say that, here is BC or CB, here we go. That's the only one side. You must call it X. If they write this as the question, then find the length and call it X, because sometimes they don't label it X for you. A lot of the times they don't label it X. They'll give you an angle in this. Let's give you a nice angle. Here we go. So let's call this one 27 degrees. Okay, and it says find BC. So the first thing we do, because it's right angle, is SOHCAHTOA. We write all three out, even though we only need one of them. And we label all three sides. Remember, I told you the order: the hypotenuse first, the opposite, then the adjacent. So the hypotenuse is always opposite the right angle. So there's a H. We walk around. Now they've got X there. Now X, even though it's the missing side that we're working and it doesn't have a number, we need it. So that's the that's not the opposite. It's the opposite is the one opposite the angle given. Please remember that. Don't copy the last example. Opposite is the angle opposite. So there's the opposite. The X, therefore, is the adjacent. So you have to label your H, your O, and your A. If you label these three things wrong, one of them even wrong, okay, the whole question is wrong. So what's the order first? Hypotenuse first, which is the longer side opposite the 90. Opposite is opposite the angle. Here's the angle. This is the side opposite. I draw arrows if it helps. So that's the opposite, and the side left over is the adjacent. Now we go for the walk. So I was trying to go for the walk earlier. We look at H first. Now H doesn't have an X next to it. Remember, you should always label the side you're working out X, because you'll need it. H doesn't have an X on there, and H doesn't have a number. So H is useless for me. Walk around. You go to your adjacent. It's got X in there, so I need that. So I'm going to circle that. You walk around to the opposite. Opposite as the number 7, so I need that. Remember, I told you 2 out of 3 you have to circle, not 3 out of 3, not 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, no matter what. So then I draw my pyramid. Here we go. Here's one, and the second one I'll draw it nice and big. Here we go. And then what we do is we find out which one we're going to use. So look at the 2 you've circled in red. We've used an O and an A, or an A and an O. The first one has an O but not an A, so we don't need that. The second one has an A but not an O, so that we can't have that. The last one, TOA, has an O and an A, so we have to use TOA. So we follow the letters in order. We start on the bottom of the pyramid, T. We climb up the pyramid, O. We move down the pyramid, A. So it's TOA. The bottom left, therefore, T stands for, look at the calculator, stands for tan, and it's always tan the angle. So the angle is 27 degrees. There you go. Once you have done that, look at the top. The top is opposite. Look at your diagram. Opposite represents 7, so I'm going to put a 7 up here. And then the bottom right represents adjacent, and adjacent represents X, so I'm going to put X here. There you go. So one of these should always have an X. What do we do now? We take our finger, okay? We take your finger and cover the X. Now, if you cover the X with your hand, do it. Don't just stare at it. Cover the X with the hand. Look at what you've got now. You've got a 7 on the top of the pyramid, okay? So I'll just do it here. You've got a 7 on top of the pyramid. Divide. This line here then means divide, okay? We're not going across. We're going up and below. So 7 divided by tan is on the bottom, and in brackets 27. Like I told you, whether it's sin, cos, or tan, there should always be an angle next to it. So it's 7 over tan 27. You have to show this as the working out, and that is your answer. Check it on the calculator, see what you get. If you are going to try some questions and you want to send it to me, here we go. I'll put some questions out for you. There we go. So you can do this one. Here we go. Let's give you the angle here, 44 degrees, x, and let's call this 15 centimeters. So find x for me. I'll give you a second question if you want to practice. There we go. Let's put the angle at the bottom this time, 38 degrees. There we go. Let's do 9 centimeters, and let's call this one x. And the last one, nice little tricky one over here. So we'll do 1, 2, 3. The 90 degrees I'll put up here. Be careful with that. Here is, let's call this one x. And let's call this one 41 degrees. That's 41 degrees. And let's do, I want to give you a nice one. Let's call this one 11 centimeters. Okay, so there's 3 questions there for you. Have a go at them. Okay, now I've given you the x's this time, so see what you get with that, and send me it with working out whatever you got, and then I will check it as well. Make sure you do the pyramids, and then after the pyramids you take out the thing that you're going to put in the calculator, the working out. I want to see that as well. Don't just have it in the pyramid and give me the answer. I want to see what you've taken out, because I want to know whether you've divided it or times it as well. The next question that you've asked me is this, how to do the angles. So in an angle, they have to give you 2 sides. Okay, so here, let's call it 15 centimeters, and let's call this one 13 centimeters. They'll give you an angle, but the angle that they'll give you normally is x, missing angle. But they have to give you 2 sides out of the 3. So what's the first step we do? We label again the h, the o, and the a. Always the same. The hypotenuse is opposite the right angle. There you go. There's the right angle. The opposite is opposite the angle, not the 90 degrees though, the angle. Now I know angle is x, but it's still the same. We take that respect of the angle and x, and we call this the opposite. The adjacent is the side left over, so there's the adjacent. We then go for a walk again, and we label 2 out of the 3 sides again. The good thing about the angled one is, look, that's got a number, that's got a number. Adjacent doesn't have a number, and we're not even working the side out because we're working out an angle. So the good thing about working out a missing angle is 2 of the sides will be given to you. Now you've got that, we'll write at the top, So, Ka, and Toa. We'll have a pyramid. Here we go. And another big pyramid, larger one. I always do a large one on the other side. There we go. And according to this, which 2 have we circled this time? We've circled the hypotenuse and the opposite. And look at that. That's got the hypotenuse and opposite. The order doesn't matter as long as it's got O and H in there, or H and O. So we label it S-O-H. The S stands for sin, so we put sin in there. But this time we put X. There you go. You put an X because that is the angle technically, and that's the angle we're working out. O is on the top. So O represents 13, and the hypotenuse represents 15. So now, for the angle, this is the only one that you have to do the inverse in. Okay, that's the one to the -1. And the reason why you have to do it to the -1 is because you're splitting the sin from the x up. Okay, you're finding the inverse of it. So therefore, to find out x, this is how you need to write it. X equals, because you're working out the value of the angle, sin -1, because you're splitting the sin from the x. So remember, if you do it to the -1, that is an angle. So think about it. If you cover this one with your hand still, what have you got here? You will have in brackets, you can use the fraction button, 13 over 15, and close the bracket. So angle will always be division, okay, because the sin, cos, and tan will be at the bottom, and to always cover this one up, okay, to find the inverse, it will always be this division, always. Put this in the calculator, don't forget to use the brackets, and that will give you the missing angle. Let's try another one. Let's do 1, 2, 3, the horrible ones. There we go, 90 degrees there. Let's call it A, B, and C. Let's also call, actually not A, B, and C. Let's make it more interesting. Let's call it P, Q, and R. And here it says find Q, R, P. And they put a little hat on the top. I'll show you how that's done if you're not sure. And then we put some lengths in there as well, just to kind of have a bit of a flavor. So we'll have here 11 centimeters, and we'll have here 9 centimeters. Okay, so right, first things first, we need to find where the angle is, because we have to label it X. Without X, we can't do anything. So what's the first letter on here? The first letter is Q. So you take a highlighter, you start with Q. You then go to the next letter R. There we go, from Q to R. And then you go to the last letter P, which is here. So look at the two red lines. They make up, if you close it, they make up this angle. Two lines make up this angle. That's why we use a highlighter. Therefore, that becomes your X. Okay. Once you've got that, and that's your X, what do? We label again, HOA. Have you noticed I'm always focusing on HOA? Please don't mix it up, HOA, with sin, cos, and tan. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just labeling your sides. The hypotenuse, I follow the order, is always opposite the right angle. There we go, I talk to myself, and there's the hypotenuse. The opposite is opposite the angle, not the 90 degrees again. Here is the angle. This is opposite it. Look, I draw the arrows as well. Okay, I don't just pick a number randomly and think, that looks like it. It's opposite the angle, even though they haven't given us the angle number. So therefore, that's the opposite. And the side that's left over is the adjacent. What do we do now? We go around in a circle. We have to circle 2 out of 3. That's got a number. The hypotenuse doesn't have a number, nor are we working out, but the adjacent has a number. So what are we using? We're using the opposite and the adjacent. So according to SOHCAHTOA, SOHCAH and TOA, always write this out. I'm looking for O and A, or A and O. This is the only one with O and A. Once we've done that, we draw 2 pyramids. One, actually it's 2, I'll draw it here. So we've got, I'm going to have space, I'll draw it up here. So we've got 1 here, and I'll just draw the second one here, nice and big. We'll split it up. Here we go. So because we're using TOA, always write out the letters first. T-O-A. Remember, I went up the pyramid, then down the pyramid. T represents tan of the angle. Must always have the angle. Don't leave it blank. The angle will be X, because that's the whole point of unknown. The opposite is on the top, so therefore we've got 11. And then the adjacent is 9, so 9 is at the bottom. So what do? Again, remember, we split the tan from the X up. How do we split the tan from the X up? It becomes tan minus 1. We open a bracket, and it's always these two that will be division, always. So 11 over 9. Close the bracket, and that will give you the angle X. I want you to try a couple, please. Have a go. So we'll do one here. There we go. We'll call this angle X. We'll call this one 14 centimeters. And we'll call this one 8 centimeters. So you need to find out what this is. SOHCAHTOA. There's the right angle. Second one I'm going to give you here. Let's call this one RST. There's your right angle. Let's call this one, let's put the angle here this time, X. Let's call this one, actually no, I'm not going to call this one there. Let's see if you work it. I'm going to change it around. Let's have a bit of fun. There we go. Let's see if you can work out, find RTS. There's the hat. So find angle RTS. And let's give you some measurements. Let's call this one 7 centimeters. And let's call this one 12 centimeters. And then I want you to find RTS. You find where it is. Let's draw one more for you. There we go. Right angle. So let's call this one P, Q, and R. And let's say find RQP. Just follow the lines, follow the letters highlighted, R to Q to P. Let's call this one 18 centimeters. And let's call this one 10 centimeters. and find RQP. So let's try a couple of these. Try these three as well. And if you've had a go at it, that's fantastic. Okay, send it to me if you want to show me as well. And remember to use inverse. Just the last thing, because these are the most popular questions that generally come up as well. So let's see, have you ever go at this? Sometimes now they throw two triangles at you. So they might give you something like this. Let me just draw it really quickly. Okay, so there's two triangles. And they might say, here we go, find x. Okay, and then in one of the triangles, what they like to do, this is what they generally do as well. They might say to you, this is 8 centimeters, and this is, I don't know, let's call this one 38 degrees. Okay, and then they can turn around and say, let's give you this one as 19 centimeters. Okay, the trick of this is, okay, so they can ask you anything, and it's about going from one triangle to the other triangle. Okay, so going from one triangle to the other triangle. In order for that to happen, remember, if they're asking you to work out what angle X is in this triangle over here where I've put a cross. You never ever start with the triangle where you are going to work out the missing length or the missing angle. Never ever start on this, start on the other triangle. Okay, so we're going to start on this triangle where I've got the tick. Okay, I'm focusing on this triangle. That should be 90 degrees and there's 90 there. Always focus on the triangle that doesn't have it. So I'm going to focus on the one on the left. Always also focus on the line, the length that connects both triangles together. In this case, it's here. Okay, so look what I'm going to do. I'm just going to highlight this triangle in green. And if I draw that triangle out, look, here we go. There's the right angle. It means I've got 38 here. Look, I'm just copying the triangle on the top and I've got 8 centimeters at the bottom. There's my 8. You always need to work out the length that connects both triangles together. So I'm going to call this one X, and I've put it in red and I've put red in X. So I need to work this out. So you're going to use trigonometry for this. You're going to label your sides H, O, and then A. You're going to use SOHCAHTOA, find out what that X is. Once you work out what this X is over here, guess what? This X then makes this triangle over here on the right hand side. So you have to start on the left to work out always the length that connects both triangles together. Once you work out what this X is, guess what? This X will be here. You'll have this X here. Okay? Then you've got this 19 on the top, this 19 here on the top. You've got this X that you've just worked out. Imagine you work it out and it's 7.2. I'm making it up. Please do it yourself. It's 7.2 and then this is X. Guess what you've got? You've got two lengths to work out what this missing angle is. Guess what you have to do with this second triangle? You do SOHCAHTOA again. Don't forget to use inverse. So you've moved from one triangle to the second triangle. But always start on the triangle that doesn't have the X because you have to find the length that connects it. Okay, so try that for me, please, as well, and see what you get.